By the way, is that your new webcam, Pro?
I'm really going for the obese look instead of the morbidly obese, and I think that this camera really shows that bedside for me. So,
welcome to Rogue Bogues, the basketball series. Myself, Mike Procopio, coming in from Dallas, Texas. What's going on?
That was one of the worst Texas accents I've ever seen in my life.
I'll do an Australian one for us then. Count me with an Australian one then, smartass.
I don't even do American. They think I'm from fucking Mongolia when I speak, so don't worry about me. So we're good.
Yeah.
Good day, mate.
Good day, mate. That's the standard.
Oh,
American
by the way,
one.
let me get this out of the way. I know we're on a time we're on a time constraint. I fucked up I screwed up last week. I actually thought Cedi Osman was still on Cleveland, and I forgot. I was watching Victor the other day, and first 2 seconds of the game, I see Osman coming off a pick and roll. I was like, fuck, I fucked that one up. So I do have to apologize.
I've got one too then. So Joel Embiid, not France, Cameroon, I believe. That's where we screwed that up. But it was the same point. The same point is still relevant that you should,
without question,
you shouldn't get essentially drafted to play for your national team. But a few people noted that it was our same point. But yes, France, his family lives there now. He's French speaking, didn't spend much time there. Mm-hmm. Grew up in Cameroon. And I believe Siakam, I think, is the other one. I think that is from Cameroon. So they could actually have a half decent team. I don't know about the rest of their athletes they got there. But that's a mistake from the pod for everybody. Pro 1, me too. So don't break our nuts too much. We do make mistakes. It is a medium budget production now, Pro. Not low, it's medium now, and we'll eventually get to a high budget production. I hope one day.
And also, let's not try to show me as little as possible. I've gotten 88 messages about how big my fucking head is. They think I'm terminally ill. I've had about 80. I'm like, dude, I've been an ugly motherfucker since I've been out of the womb. So if you want to just go to you all the time, I'm cool with that. But people
are ugly shaming you, Pro. They can't do that in 2023.
But unlike 98% of the other weak motherfuckers on this planet, I could take it. I know I'm an ugly motherfucker, and I admit it. I embrace it. I embrace being a fat ugly fuck. But what are you gonna do?
Gotta get on with it. All right, here we go. NBA news: load management. Pro, this is interesting. Load management is no longer supported by scientific evidence, according to a top NBA official, which I believe was Joe Dumars. They say that they have conducted studies and haven't really noticed a big difference when guys rest. Adam Silver has said, look, it's not conclusive, but we're seeing the same kind of data. This is interesting because we both believe it's gone too far. The pendulum has gone too far towards load management. I think we can both agree on that, and it has. When you got random nights that are just circled on the calendar, I think you should still have some input from the players that if they feel like they can go, they go. But I think this is the other end of the pendulum. Like, you can't tell me that risk is not limited if you don't play guys on games. That's the big thing. Is it going to help their recovery as much and all that kind of stuff? Because they technically, if you're going to rest a guy tomorrow, they still want conditioning done for that guy. You're still going to be in the weight room. It's not like it's for fans out there that don't know. If I'm being told, okay, Bogut, you're not playing Friday, I'm still doing stuff on that Friday. I'm still with the team. I'm still at shoot around. I'm still training. I'm still lifting weights. I'm still getting my rehab. But I think it does lower your risk because you've got a less chance of a high impact injury or an ankle turn or a knee. So if you are resting guys, I think there is lower risk because if you play 82 games, you've got a higher risk of landing on a foot. You've got a higher risk of falling on your butt or your back or this or that. So I don't take the NBA side as far as there's no real evidence, but I don't like the full pendulum of we're just going to pick random rest nights. So I think it's slowly starting to become where it's going to be meet in the middle, where every now and then you can get away with it. But it was interesting to see Joe Dumars and even Adam Silver go that gung-ho on there's no scientific evidence.
Yeah, I mean, man, imagine going one end to the other. Like, they were like radically with load management, all this study, data, things like this. You have to rest. And now to go back on this, and I think it's really interesting that they're doing this new rule about not sitting players, and now you're going to come out with a study saying that, supporting that, you need to play more and not load manage. I'll be honest with you, if you're going to really make a big push for load management, Bogues, I think there's a big problem with players coming into the league that play way too much from like 13 to 18. I don't think that once you're a professional athlete, you have all this coaching and science and all these assets to sort of prolong your career. I think that players are coming in a little bit broken from playing way too much. Remember 20, 30 years ago, these guys were playing 30 AAU games a year tops, and then they'll play 25 at their high school, and that's it. They'll work out a little bit. Now they've got trainers that they work with 90 times a week. Then you've got 120 AAU games.
120?
Your high school. Oh, Bogues. They play about 100 games a summer. Like on
top of high school
weekend,
games.
they'll a typical AAU game. Yeah, like AAU season, they'll play about 100 games.
And then
they'll
30 to 40 high school,
games.
right?
Yeah, they'll play about 30 high school, 30.
Jeez.
Like some states have 20, some have 35. Now, it's but like these AAU games, Bogues, like the high school games you play like twice a week, right? But the AAU stuff, you play like 6 or 7 games in a weekend. And if you advance, you might play even more. And you play every weekend. I'm telling you, I think that you need to be able to have these kids play every other weekend and put less stress on their joints and educate them about taking care of their bodies. I think load management in the NBA doesn't make any sense because they're already top line athletes. They've got the best people working with them, to monitor all this stuff, and they got the best of the best working with them. I think you just mandate the 14 to 18, to be honest with you. I think we have to sort of rev those guys up, but you can't be, and I think that's a big problem, Bogues, coming in. Like these players before, they never did that. And there was a couple of great articles on ESPN the last couple of years about how these kids are playing way more and their joints and things are getting damaged as an early age, and now it sort of prolongs them to more injury.
Because they're coming in broken, right? They're coming in broken. They're coming in with issues. Yeah, I mean, and the AAU thing's a whole separate conversation because there's so much money involved in those tournaments, correct?
For sure. Yeah, used to be Bogues. Like I started with it when I was 18, and it was great because it wasn't that much. A lot of these tournaments you play with 1 court, 2 courts. Now you got these mega 10, 12, 14 court facilities. And like these guys that were running AAU tournaments back in the day, they might make 10 grand in a weekend. These guys on an average on these big mega tournaments, they're coming out of there with about 300 grand with all the stuff they charge you, teams, fees, films for the kids. You sell, like they sell you the games now, like
no wonder it's on every weekend. No wonder it's on
every weekend. Yeah, multi-millionaires now. These guys running these events. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy that you just go from one end to the other, Bogues, with the load management thing, but it is what it is.
I think it's needed every now and then, but you got to have the conversation with the player. I think the pendulum of we're just picking a random night and resting you. They need to have a discussion with the players and have an open dialogue with it. And we're seeing the Clippers push back this year that they kind of come in and not do that. And they need to not do that because
they're saying
they're going to do it. But they need to not do it, bro. Like we've spoken about this for so many years that they just never seem like they're in a good rhythm together. They never seem like they're flowing nicely. It always seems like if Kawhi or PG have an individual performance, they got a chance to win. It's never like Golden State or even Sacramento's last run where everything's clicking, the ball's moving, roles are defined because they don't play enough games together to know this is my role, because you've got role players that are the man for the games that Kawhi and PG aren't in. So then all of a sudden you've got guys that are getting 20 shots. Then, hey, big Kawhi comes back and PG, the big dogs, now you're getting 5, figure out your role. That's hard. It's hard to do on the fly. And I think that's why they've been bad.
Reminds me of the G League, Bogues, where guys would be playing with, they'll play it as a group for a while, and then the NBA team will send you down 2 or 3 players. And now you go from playing 38 minutes a night or 36 minutes to like 4 minutes. And it's weird. It's what the Clippers need to figure that out because they've underachieved the last couple of years, obviously because of load management. So hopefully they play a lot more. Those guys are good. They're talented. They're fun to watch. They got good role players around them too. So, hopefully this whole, you can't really sit guys that much anymore. Really, I think it's more for the fans than anything else. So I just hope that, I hope they figure it out. Look, I think everybody, we talked about this before. I don't want to sort of go overboard on the point, but I think that everybody wants everyone healthy and playing their best basketball coming in April, and that's the thing. That's hey, how do we get to April? But I'll tell you what, I think if you just monitor it, you play these guys, you rest them, maybe you practice a little less and, you still rev them up for games and things, but and these teams don't practice that much anyway. I think you just have to have a good formula so everybody's sort of clicking come April. So that's the main goal in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a balance thing, and every now and then you'll have to rest guys. It does. It may traditionally before this whole load management stuff jumped on steroids. It was generally the last 3 weeks of a season. You do that anyway. It just, even in the 90s and the 2000s, if you already solidified your seed or knew where you were in your conference, or we're going to be a 1 or a 2 or a 3, we can't move up or down. Usually the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, if you're a really good team, you'd play 50%, 40% of your games. And usually coaches would like you to play a full game leading into the playoffs. So they'd rest you. You got 8 games left. They'd rest you, 5 out of those 8. And the last 2, they'd try to ramp you back up just so you're in rhythm. So maybe it goes back towards that, but I think that's fair enough. All right, the Celtics hire Van Gundy. Good hiring, in my opinion. Yes, I think that I spoke about it last week that they are a little raw with their head coach. That's the elephant in the room. The Boston Celtics. He's second year. Ime Udoka leaving. Not really a guy that's been in the NBA that long prior to that, all that kind of stuff. So found himself in a debacle of a situation and got the head coaching spot. Is a pretty good coach from what I hear, but still raw. And I think bringing in a guy like Van Gundy, who has, had the clipboard, he's been in the commentary booth, he's been around basketball his whole life. I don't think it's the worst decision. And I think for Boston, I think it's a really, really good thing. And then you've obviously got Stevens there. You've got a lot of good basketball minds to help mold Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah, Jeff Van Gundy is all about coaching. He's got a coaching family. He's been doing it forever. He's been in the booth. He hasn't really been coaching NBA players the last decade or so, obviously been on TV and doing those big games there. But I think it's always good to have somebody that you could rely on. Their assistants are young, energetic and things, but I know they hired Sam Cassell, but they need a guy like that you could just sort of bounce things off of. It's always great to have mentors that have been there, that's been the highest level, the very coaching educated. It's just like anything else, that he's been through everything that you're going through. He's already been through 28 times and he's dealt with, and he can give you good feedback. I think anytime you have a guy that's that smart around your organization, you could just sort of bounce things off of. From what I read, he's not going to be on the bench or anything like that. He could be in meetings and consult. Yeah. So I think it's always good to have that. And it's not like you're going to have him on the bench where it might be a distraction for you if you didn't really, obviously, I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that Mazzulla wasn't behind the hiring. So it's good to have him as an advisor where you could bounce things off of anytime you want, rather than have this guy say, well, I didn't hire him. Now, is he going to try to get my job if I struggle? Are they going to make a move? You never know, but it's great to have a resource like that. And Jeff is always pro coach. He's always, you listen to his telecast besides going at the referees and everything about the NBA, which I like. He is always pro coach and trying to promote coaches, trying to he's always have coaches' backs. He's son of a coach. His dad was a longtime junior college coach in New York. So I think it's great. I think it's always good to have. And like you said, Joe hasn't been through a lot of this stuff yet. He's been through it as an assistant. He's never really ran a team until last year. And I think it's always good. I think it takes 2 or 3 years to really, I think to adjust, unless you got this great team, which he does have. But I think it takes some time and you're going to make mistakes. And I think it's really good to have someone like that you could always sort of go to.
I think it's good hiring. And I think just having more basketball brains to help him, the better. And he'll, like you said, he's going to have his up and down still figuring this thing out. Hasn't been an NBA lifer, hasn't been around in any capacity in the front office. So he's going to have to learn on the fly as he is, but that is the one part that they needed to address, and they have addressed it. All right, last 2 items of news are our friends in Charlotte, Pro, Kai Jones. This should have been a fact or fake news last week, though, by the way, Pro. We should have put this one in. It's a pretty obvious one. Yeah. He has been waived. Yeah. All the shenanigans, all the issues of socials, telling people that he's a Hall of Famer and he's better than Hall of Famers. Didn't go down too well. Charlotte were just like, you know what, we're just going to move on. Do you see him back in the NBA? Will he have to, I see a route potentially cleaning himself up, getting off whatever he's on, getting maybe some mental help, seeing a psych, all that kind of stuff, maybe going through the G League again, but I don't see him back in the NBA this season, bro.
Let me rub my crystal ball, Bogues. I see Rosetta Stone. I see playing in Mongolia. I see not being in the NBA anytime soon, Bogues. I really don't see it. I see either going to the D League, G League, and trying to figure it out there. I don't think he's good enough to deal with all this stuff, that you have to deal with. And I think that it's going to be tough. I could probably see him more in the G League than anything else, but if I'm an NBA team, I don't know. I'm not really excited about having that guy on my roster. It's one thing if a really good player sort of does that and you're like, all right, we're going to take a flyer on him, right?
Risk reward. We always talk about it. Risk reward, right?
Yeah.
You're not good enough to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, if it's J.R. Smith or something, you take a chance on him. If you're that guy who's okay as a player, but now you got to deal with all this stuff, he's a term that I learned early in my NBA career. He's radioactive, and that's what he is. He's radioactive. I think you sort of stay away. He needs a lot of help. You could see that, he needs someone that, can mentor the kid. And right now it's like your credit, like this stuff's like your credit rating, when you have your reputation. And right now you're just developing your reputation of being a pro, being good at developing your skills, developing yourself off the court. And if people see that, they're like running for the hills. Like I said, if you're a really good player, it's one thing, but if you're an average player and you're dealing with this and you don't want this headache, I don't really see him. So
I don't even see him going overseas, bro. I know we make the joke about Mongolia, but can you imagine his headspace being in a country where he doesn't speak the language and has to adjust to cultures? So I think we can cross that one out as well. I think G League is the only hope.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, there's a lot of young guys that do have a similar mentality to him, albeit they don't put it on a live stream on Instagram. But I've played with a few guys, and we always talk about there's confidence and there's delusion, right? And there's a lot of young kids that truly believe. I played with a guy in Golden State. I won't name him, but I was sitting on the bench one time with him early on in my tenure in Golden State before the rise when I first got there, and he was a young name that was really good in high school, hadn't played a lot in the NBA, and we're playing. I
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're playing the Miami Heat, and I got traded, and I was still injured at the time, and I'm sitting next to him on the bench, and he's like, "Man, if I just got the minutes that guy got, I could put up his numbers." He pointed at LeBron. And I was like, did you just point at LeBron, or did you point at like Joel Anthony? Like, who'd you point at? And he's like, no, LeBron. Like, I could average a triple double in this league if I just got the same minutes. I just can't get the opportunity. I was like, listen, man, like, it's good to be confident, but you're crazy, man. Like I said, a smaller goal for you would be a double double, which is very hard to do in this league. Put the triple double aside, but my point is, there's a lot of young kids that come through high school, AAU, college, where they're the man, they're pumped up, they're this, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of adversity, you don't get minutes, you're playing only 10, if that, and they really, truly believe if I get the minutes, I could be Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe, and you feel bad because, and you can't argue with guys like that. Try to have a conversation, and it's like, I got told I was a hater by the kid, because I was like, bro, like, chill out on that, and he's like, no, you're just a hater, man. I'm like, no, I'm just being realistic. If you're setting yourself a goal of a triple double, I'll bet the house you're going to fail on that because you're not even in the rotation yet, and that's the sad reality of some of these poor kids that have bad mentors, family, people that are pumping them up so much they can't see. Just do some smaller things and you'll play a role in the NBA.
I mean, Bogues, it's just, first of all, I bet the NBA hires him to speak to NBA teams about social media one-on-one. To be honest, I could see that. They usually go that way when it comes to sort of.
No, it'll be in like 20 years. It'll be like 20 years.
Yeah.
So Pro's point is there's a guy with the union. There's a guy. Hold on. Pro's point is
without question.
There's a guy that was with the NBA union that was a guest speaker that used to come talk to us about drugs. That was a heavy drug addict, and all he talks about was like snorting lines before games when he plays.
Yeah,
and he's giving us advice 20 years later.
They'll always send the guy that blew all his money to talk about financial management. They'll talk about the biggest drunk. They'll talk about, how you should really take yourself serious. How you got to stay away from alcohol. They'll always take the biggest, like, uncoachable guy and they're talking about being a professional 101. I'm like, come on, man. It's hypocrisy 101, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest problem, Bogues, coming in this league is teaching players how to be professional, because these rosters are getting younger and younger. The coaches are getting younger and younger. Everybody wants to put gloves on and not really talk to these guys and to be honest about them. They'll give you all the sound bites that you hear on TV. You hear Doris Burke and, all these other people talking about, culture and all this stuff. But nobody teaches these guys and really, and I'm not talking about the great players. I'm not talking about the guys drafted in the first 5 or 6 picks. I'm talking about the rest of the players that are drafted, the undrafted players, really how to be a professional and teaching them about routine and the importance of being a pro, getting your work in, being prepared, being coachable, being able to talk to people in the organization and be outgoing like that. And then we'll worry about the battle of, getting minutes, grinding it out, getting your opportunity. Because there's a lot of players that, will go to Oklahoma City and they'll have 4 players at their position and they're going to die on the vine just because they're not going to get minutes. So there's going to be situations like that. But, because getting minutes in the NBA on a consistent basis outside of summer league, outside of preseason is really tough on a regular basis. So you really need, and players, because they've been jerked off since they're 10 years old about how great they are. Nobody ever wants to tell them the truth. And that's all they've been hearing. And then they come to you, they're not playing, they're not getting plays called to them. The coach doesn't even know their name. And you're trying to teach them, say, hey, look, dude, you gotta be here early. You gotta see your physio. You gotta get a 30-minute lift in with your strength coach. Then you gotta go on the court, get your shots up. Then you gotta find an assistant coach to watch film on either you or an opponent or somebody you want to study. And then you practice and then you get your shots up. And then, you know what I'm saying? That's the biggest problem and why players don't make it in the league. And they don't understand how quickly you're going to get chewed up and spit out, because there's 60 more players drafted. There's going to be 4 or 5 players coming from international outside of the draft that plays in FIBA or whatever, and they bring over. And these jobs just keep on rotating out. And if you don't really get into the system early and really know what you're doing and have somebody teach you, it's hard. But like I said, nobody wants to be a leader these days. Coaches don't say anything to you. If they make it, they want to take all the credit. If you don't make it, they don't know your name and they don't care. And it just keeps recycling. So hopefully some of these players could, smarten the fuck up with this stuff.
Yep. Final one. We don't have to get into it too deeply, but Miles Bridges again has surfaced, breaking his, restraining order or whatever he's on probation, from what I understand, cannot make direct contact with his ex baby mama or ex-girlfriend, apparently threw billiard balls at the vehicle with the ex and the child in it. So we always talk about, look, he messed up big time and took his punishment. And despicable what he did the first time. We both agree with that. I'm always a guy that's like, look, you made your mistake, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long your suspension is. Once you're back and you've paid your penalty, I'm about second chances. As hard as it is for someone like that and what he did to give a second chance, people deserve a second chance. But when you then go follow that up again, I'm done. I literally have no respect or time for someone and that was a drastic mistake. Don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning anything but my point is that he served his penalty. He's taken his medicine. You come back and do it again. You're like, I can't have any iota of third, fourth, fifth chance for you. Especially when it comes to that stuff. It's horrendous. And, he's $100 million player, over his career could earn $150, $200 million up in smoke, pro.
Bogues, not going to go too far into it. I'm just going to say it's just, there's certain things I do believe you should get second chances on. But if we're reading this right and he did this after the fact, after the suspension, after everything went through, and then he got back in the NBA and he did this, I would suspend him long term or disband him. I think that you got to set a precedent in this league that, it's a special thing to be a professional basketball player. And when you're putting women in harm's way, you're putting a child in harm's way, you're throwing billiard balls from a distance at the car. It just, what are we doing? You just don't care. Like, you think you're going to get a million chances. I think he's a limited player in the first place. I thought he was a decent player. He's okay. He plays hard and all that, but we're not even talking about basketball anymore, Bogues. We're talking about, look, if you do, and putting your hands on a female, I say automatically banished from the league. I think you have to do something else, to be honest. I don't think, look, if you caught with a DWI or DUI, you've done drugs one time, something like that, you get there's an issue. Yeah, there are a lot of instances where I say, all right, fine them, suspend them, second chance. But this, I think there's no place in the NBA for him. If you're going to be doing this,
the official statement via ESPN: allegation of violating a protection order, misdemeanor child abuse, and injury to personal property. So it sounds like the story about throwing billiard balls at a car and whatnot. But
let's go forward.
Just out of stupidity.
I'm losing my appetite. Fucking listen to this shit, about this, and that's
all right.
Let's
get into our Western Conference previews. I'll run through my 15 pro. This was a hard one. This was a harder one than the East, I think. There's a lot of unknowns in the West, especially with injuries and roster makeup and whatnot. But I'm going to go with my 15. Phoenix 1, Denver 2, Clippers 3, Memphis 4, Golden State 5, Sac 6. I'm going to put Dallas at 7, which is a bit controversial. 8, New Orleans, 9, OKC, 10, Lakers, 5 I have missing out, Minnesota 11, Houston 12, Spurs 13, Utah 14, Portland 15. What do you got?
Wow, that's not bad, Bogues. I got Phoenix 1, Denver 2, Clippers 3, Sac 4, Oklahoma City 5, Golden State 6, Lakers 7, Memphis 8, Minnesota 9, Dallas 10, New Orleans 11, and then I got Utah, Portland, Houston, San Antonio.
OKC at 6?
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good. Bogues.
That's a big one.
No, actually 5. They're 5. Actually.
That's a
flyer.
flyer.
I have 46 wins.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with Phoenix. Arguably the best big 3 in the league, if healthy, in my opinion. I like Beal. He's older, but the fact that he plays both ends. He has been injury prone, but I think that with his previous team, he had carried so much of a load at both ends. I think on this team, he can kind of take, not nights off, but he can be that third wheel offensively, not too much pressure, really concentrate on guarding. And I hope that then reflects positively towards injuries where he can stay on the floor. So I think he should stay healthy based on that. I love Grayson Allen as an acquisition for them with that roster. I think that was an awesome pickup in that trade. 3-and-D guy, doesn't need the ball. There's talks about him being dirty, but he's a fighter, he's a grinder, he's going to do what he can to try and win games. And they need that in that group. They have a lot of guys that kind of are really good offensively. Beal's obviously good at the defensive end, but Booker's not great defensively. KD has his moments because of his length, but he does, he's not always fully engaged at that end. But he's a huge pickup. Nurkic is the outlier, I think. I think how he plays, he's gotten a lot better protecting the paint than he once was. A big body, can throw around, so I like that. I still have Damian Lee there. Drew Eubanks they picked up. Watanabe, I think he's a decent pickup for them. So I think it's a good mix. Eric Gordon is there as well, I believe. So had a really good preseason game a couple of nights ago. So I think they have a really good 7 or 8. And obviously with a big 3, Josh Okogie will crack the rotation at times as well for his defense. So I like it. I like their roster. If they stay healthy, I think they're the best big 3 in the league, and they are my number 1.
Yeah, Bogues, I mean, definitely for sure. I agree with most of the things you just said. I mean, with those big 3, and I think that Okogie will probably start because they need a defender in there. And then Nurkic, what's up?
Over Allen?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I think Okogie will start for his defense and bring Allen off the bench to be a shooter and scorer. But then again, I could be wrong on that. But I just think they need some defense, and Okogie's played some big minutes, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands. And I think it's good, but whatever. I mean, however they're going to play it, they both guys are going to get really good minutes. But I think that obviously their offense, their experience, their talent. They did a great job with, the Ayton trade, getting more players to back up, to sort of, to expand their rotation. I think that was the biggest problem. They didn't have Allen, some of the moves they made, and they just didn't have that. So now they've got, Allen, Gordon, Watanabe, Damian Lee, they get some guys. Nasir Little could play a few minutes. Ish Wainwright could play a few minutes. So like they're a lot deeper since the trade. I mean, they spread you out. They could, obviously they could shoot the ball. They could straight line drive you. Nurkic is going to be big. He's got to stay healthy for them, because now you go into that second unit big. Then you got, Drew Eubanks, and I'm not a huge Eubanks fan. So I think that, if they could just stay healthy like everybody else, they get plenty of shooting and scoring, not only in the first unit, but second unit. And I think they've got a lot of experience. They've got a good coach in Frank Vogel. And I think that, I think if they could just keep things going the way it is, they should be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I agree. And Watanabe was, I think, top 5 in the league in 3-point field goal percentage last season. Damian Lee already a good shooter. So a lot of good shooting around the big three. So I think they're clear favorites, number 1. Number 2, we both had Denver. Championship hangover, I think a little bit. They will have a bit of a hangover, but I think what the positive of the championship hangover is their home court. Like Denver's, especially during the course of a regular season, teams flying in there on back-to-backs, the altitude really messes with you, and I think that's why they're such a good regular season team, and we'll continue that, so I still have them up the top. I think the Bruce Brown loss is huge. I really do. I think he was really important for them last season, especially in different parts of the playoffs, the Lakers series, or a few other games where it felt like Denver real clunky and grindy, and he would just come in and get on the rim, make paint, get paint touches, kicking out to shooters. So I thought he was really, really valuable for them. So I know they wanted to try to keep him, but their cap's in disarray, and they really can't do it. Reggie Jackson's obviously probably in the rotation now that Bruce Brown's out. He didn't really play when he was acquired late last season, but I think he might crack that rotation now. Obviously KCP, Porter Jr., Gordon, Jamal Murray, Jokic, of course, but that's your rotation. But they're gonna need something from some of these younger guys. I mean, Braun's probably going to play a bigger role now and take some of those Bruce Brown minutes, where he can get in the paint, slash, downhill guy, and he probably had he had a good season last season. But I think they're going to expect more from him, and it's probably going to have to be another young guy that maybe you touch on that I don't really know much about. That's going to have to rear his head in the rotation at some point during the season and help him share some of the load.
Yeah, Bogues, I think they're very much like Miami in what Miami did in the offseason. We talked about it last week, where they, because of their cap, they lost a couple of guys, and now they didn't really replace them. They've got young guys that are unproven that have to step into those minutes. And I think the same thing happened with Denver. Obviously their front 5 of Murray, KCP, Porter, Gordon, Jokic is unmatched. I think they're a very good team with that, and they've got a lot of experience together, and they've been through those wars. The problem that they're going to have is that second unit. Not only when you lose, Bruce Brown, but you also lose Jeff Green, which I think is a huge loss.
Yeah.
Because he's that versatile forward that's athletic, that can guard, that could straight line drive, that's just been through a million wars with different teams and been deep in the playoffs. I think the guy that they're going to probably lean on a little bit that didn't really play last year is Peyton Watson. He's out of UCLA. He's a second-year kid, averaged 3 points and 2 rebounds a game, but he's athletic and versatile guard that I think has a lot of upside. The problem is now somebody's going to have to take up the slack of that scoring, that toughness, that, look, Reggie Jackson could do a little bit of that. Justin Holiday could do a little bit of that. Braun and I think that Vlatko Kankar. I'm not sure if Kankar got hurt in the FIBA. He may or may not have. And then DeAndre Jordan, obviously. But I think that the biggest issue is gonna be that second unit. And can you don't have to be great, but you're going to have to spread the floor. You're going to have to guard. You're going to have to make open shots. And that's the thing. Holiday can shoot. Reggie Jackson can shoot. They both could spread you out, and Jackson could, score and be tough. But the problem is, can you replace Bruce Brown's toughness and ability to, to get to the basket, guard, and be tough, and then Jeff Green's versatility? And it's going to have to come from Peyton Watson. It's going to have to come from Braun Kicker. Like, it's going to have to come collectively. We know what the top 5 can go. And you know what? I've been a little bit negative with Aaron Gordon in the past, and I think Gordon has stepped his game up big time the last couple of years, especially playing with Jokic. His field goal percentage, Bogues, from when he left Orlando was at 46%. His field goal percentage playing with Jokic and Murray, 56%. And that's just his maturity. He's embraced that role of not really being a go-to guy and being that guy that has to be that 4th or 5th best player on the floor, and can guard and can play hard and can cut and can do those things. And he's reaping the benefits big time from Jokic. And, he's played great for them, but it's going to be the second year.
When he first got to Denver, it took him a little bit to figure that out. Like, he was still standing in the corner waiting for the swing, and then as months went on, a friend of mine's a real big Denver fan, and even he was talking about, man, I don't know how this works. And then you'd see he started to figure out, oh, if I cut, this guy's going to find me. If I back cut this, if I don't stand and I move, they're going to find me. And as the season wore on, most guys in the NBA are so used to, I'm going to score my points by getting the ball in my hands and breaking someone down. He figured out, like, I don't need to do that. It's not as pretty and not as elegant at times, but you're getting layups and dunks. And he was a menace in that playoff run. He was getting lob dunks and crashing O-boards and back cutting. So I agree. I wasn't high on that acquisition from Denver early on, but I think it really turned into something well. And that's because Gordon bought into a role and was happy to be that 3rd, 4th, 5th fiddle at times. And he's really embraced it, really done a good job.
Right. No doubt.
All right. Clippers, the next one for both of us, I believe we had it 3. Now, I hope we're not getting pump fake pro. I'm basing my pick on the load management, hopefully somewhat gone or at least tweaked. So, hopefully if the Clippers pump fake us and they load manage like they did last season, I would have them at 3. I'm doing it based on that. So I think they'll surge based on actually having guys out there and playing together. I mean, the starting 5, I've got 4 of them locked, which is Westbrook, PG, Kawhi, and Zubats. Who's the 4? You think it's Morris? You think he fits in there at the 4?
I've heard they've been trying to trade Morris. I like
Batum?
Morris. I think that, what's up?
Who's
it
the
could
4?
be Batum. No, wait a minute. I don't even have Batum on my list here. It's probably going to be Morris, but hold on. Let me see what ESPN has on their stuff. So they got Batum on there. As far as their depth chart, they've got Westbrook, George, Leonard, Batum, and Zubac. Now, it could change, but that's what they got.
But yeah, I think they're going to be tough. And then, the other thing is the Harden chatter. What do they lose to get Harden? I don't think it'll be much, but bring him in. Do you start him straight away? Do you keep him as a 6th man? What does it do with Westbrook? Does Westbrook maybe go over in that trade? I don't know, but that's another outlier that'll fit in. I like their backup in Plumlee. I think he could start for a lot of teams in the NBA. He's a pretty good center backup to have. Can play a role. He's pretty good. You got 2 7-footers there you can rotate in and out. So Norman Powell there. You got a gunner off the bench that can still come off the bench and give you 25, 30 on a hot streak. Bones Highland, does he fit in? He got traded there in that deal with Reggie Jackson last season at Denver. Was pouting not playing in Denver. They got him out of there. Didn't play a whole lot for the Clippers. He was up and down at times. Played a little bit, then didn't, then did. He might probably solidify some time in the rotation now going through a full training camp. So they have a pretty deep roster. They have Terrence Mann's the other one that we didn't mention, who's a young and up-and-coming player. So they have a pretty good mix of youth and veterans and all-stars. It's got to keep them on the court and not be load managed, bro.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's the toughest thing when you're trying to evaluate where teams are going to fall, in the East or the West, because you got talent and everything. And look, a lot of these teams are going to rest a little bit, and they may not finish high in the standings, but they're going to be healthy in the playoffs and they're going to come alive, sort of like what Miami did last year. So it's tough. With the Clippers, if you're just saying that, look, they're going to play and they're going to go forward with this thing, and I think they're going to have to. I think that there's a lot of people's jobs on the line with this roster doing well, or they're just going to shake things up. I think this is probably going to be the last year. If they underachieve again this year, it's probably going to be the last year that this team's together, in my opinion. But look, you can't doubt the talent of the starting five. Westbrook, George, Leonard, Batum, Zubac. Their bench is really good, which, tells me that like you don't really need to do the Harden trade unless you just want stars in your building. And I understand that, and just trying to just have all these stars in your roster. But I think depth is important, especially when those guys could produce. Like if you're going to have to give up Terrence Mann and Powell and a James Harden trade just to bring Harden in. I like Powell. I like Mann. Those guys play hard. You know what to expect from him. Powell could really score. He can be a third option on a lot of teams, or that third or fourth option. So it's great to have that guy off the bench with toughness and scoring. Their second unit's going to have to be big because they will have to play at some point. More. I think that the backup power forward spot for Morris and Covington's going to be really competitive. Plumlee's going to play a lot of minutes with him and Zubac. Back in one starter, one coming off the bench, obviously. And then George and Leonard. Look, there's not a lot of better two-man combinations than George and Leonard, even with the new sort of super teams formed. And I think that they're going to be as good as those two are, the two are sort of, filling up the stat sheet for them. So I liked how the team's constructed. I don't think they have to make a move. I think Harden will obviously give him a lot of talent, with star power, but I think having depth on guys that's been around and can really be tough and know the system and sort of what to expect from them. I think that it's big, but I like these guys at 3. I mean, they could challenge for a championship if they're all healthy. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but I do believe they're going to be, they can win a couple of rounds, get to a conference final, and then see what happens. But then again, we've been pump faked a lot. We got that Chandler Parsons pump fake we go for all the time. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. That they should be top 3, but yeah, who knows what happens and who knows where the Harden trade will take him. Number 4, this is where we get into a disagreement, Pro.
Go ahead. We'll go with yours. We'll go with yours.
Of course we will. We'll go with mine. Relax. No. But I'm just saying it's good. It's good to get some disagreement. People live for disagreements. That's what we're on the line. Bit of hostility. Number 4, I got Memphis. The reason why is I don't think they finished second last year, right? Albeit with the issues with Morant falling out of the lineup, the suspensions, all that kind of stuff going on, they still finished second. And I don't think they got worse. I think that Marcus Smart is a perfect replacement for losing Brooks. Bringing him in, and I think Smart's probably a better offensive player by a little bit, in my opinion. At least a better distributor. They have a pretty defensive-minded lineup. When you look at Morant, Smart, Baynes, and Jackson Jr., that's a pretty good grit and grind lineup, in my opinion. Who the 5 is, I don't know. Whether they go Adams at the 5. At times, even when Adams was healthy, they still had him coming off the bench, so I don't know what they're going to do there. They have a bit of shooting around with Roddy and who else do they have? Kennard's the other shooter they got on their roster who's pretty decent. They got some younger guys. They brought in Derrick Rose, who would be probably going on his last legs, but a pretty good bench punch for him, playing 10 to 15. You got Morant coming downhill at your game, and then you got Rose. I mean, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch as far as starter off the bench. Lofton Jr.'s played his way into a roster spot. Tillman's in there. I don't know much about the younger guys. I'll let you touch on that, Pro. But I think they're still going to be pretty good. I think they'll still have a good home court. They'll be grit and grind. They're not going to beat themselves. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they all fit in. But I think Smart was a great pickup for him, considering they lost Brooks.
Yeah, I think he's an upgrade from Brooks for sure. You may not be able to get the offense that Brooks could give you, but I think he's a lot more manageable. I think that he never really crosses that line from being a tough guy stopper to, someone who's sort of distracting with some of the bonehead things that Brooks would do on the floor that sort of get them in trouble. I do like that move. Now with Morant, how long is Morant out for, Bogues? Is he out 20 games? 25? Was it less? I forgot what the suspension was. And that's a double-edged sword for them because he's going to miss a bunch of games through the suspension. But also, they play better without him. Record-wise, they play, statistically, I think they do play better without him in the lineup. So that might actually be good, him missing. Obviously, it's not. I think they're a good team, but, is the hijinks going to stop from him? And that's the thing. And hopefully you would say yes, but we don't know. Now, they did finish high last year, no doubt about it. But, look, he's going to be out of the lineup for an extended period of time. And I forgot the games, Bogues. Do you remember
25?
How long?
Yeah, 25 games. 25 games.
25.
So
it's a lot of games.
He got
a lot of games, and
he got 8 last season when he did the Instagram live video, came back and played, and then I guess the off season again that he did it towards the end of the season, and then he got 25 games for the start. I don't think that kills him. I think it's going to help them. I thought they were really good without Morant last season. Their record over the last 2 or 3 years without Morant has been pretty good. Not something you see or you're accustomed to seeing with a team with a supermax guy missing time and the team doesn't fully dip. Usually teams can sustain it for a week or two, but he was out for a while and they sustained it. So I think they'll be okay. As long as they can be floating around 500 by the time he comes back, 12 and 13, 13 and 12, I think they'll be all right.
I just think Bogues with the West, and as we go with these teams, I've never seen it in 30 plus years of being around basketball. I've never really seen it where it's been this close from like 3 to 10, where it's you got a bunch of these teams that are going to be within a game or two of each other. A lot of these teams are going to rest at one point or another. So like a lot of these teams that are young and beating down your door, they could advance through, especially in the regular season. I look, Memphis is a good team, no doubt about it. They're well coached. They got talent. Jaren Jackson and Morant and Adams and Smart and Baynes, all those guys, they're good players. It's just, are you lucky? Can you stay healthy? Jackson's had some injury issues in the past. Can he stay healthy? There's a lot of questions in my mind. Can you get it done? And we don't know. And losing Jones was big, because he was young. They lost him to Washington. So that'll be interesting with Rose. I'm a big Derrick Rose fan. I think he's very good. He's getting up there in age, so hopefully he can keep it together, especially in the elevated minutes he's gonna have to play for Morant. So I think Morant's gotta just stop trying to be Coolio and actually just put things together and stop with the nonsense, because it's gonna really derail the team. It's gonna derail him individually. So hopefully they can move forward from it. They got a decent second unit with, Conchar and Kennard and, Brandon Clark and those guys. Nothing great out of their young group after that. They got Xavier Tillman. That's a decent player, averaged 7 and 5 last year.
Aldama wasn't bad for him. Was it Aldama? He wasn't bad for him last season either. And Aldama
wasn't bad. 9 and 5.
Yeah, it was okay.
Not bad. They've got a good group.
Brandon
They're
Clark,
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're tough. It'll be interesting how they play without Morant. If they could continue to sustain it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I just think they're not going to beat themselves. I think they're one of those teams, and I think teams that don't beat themselves usually do okay in the regular season. So, but they got to hold the fort down until Morant's back. Who'd you have at 4?
I had
Sac. I think
I had at 4. I had Sacramento.
I'll get to them in a second. 5. I had Golden State at 5. I think that they're kind of. You mentioned the Clippers are the last gasp until they blow things up. I think they obviously have their stars, but they're in their last kind of gasp of being at the top of the league. And we thought it was all over a couple of years ago. They bounced again. They've come back, and I like their acquisitions. Not any huge names, but I think CP3 should steady their second unit and give them some professionalism in that second unit. Obviously, Steph and Clay will be Steph and Clay. You throw Wiggins in there, Draymond. I think there's championship merit there. You're not gonna roll over them as easily as you think you are. And I think they'll still be in the mix. They got 2 guys that can go for 40 on any given night. Even CP potentially can have high scoring games. The big one is Kuminga. We know Steve Kerr went completely off him last season. Kuminga wouldn't buy in, I guess, to what they were doing. I don't know to what capacity. I don't have detail on it, but it was clear that there was a disconnect between the young guy and the old coach, and hopefully they've figured things out. I know Steve's a guy that will try to go to you in the off season and try to fix those relationships. And I think that his improvement is going to be huge to see how far they go. If they can have him and CP come off the bench and be very, very effective together, I think that's pretty important. I like the Corey Joseph pickup, but I liked it until they got CP3. I mean, I just don't know how you now shake him into the lineup. Can play off the ball a little bit, but I think his best positions from the point, in my opinion. And that's kind of it. Rudy Gay's the other one. I mean, he's 37 years old, but you can give him a bit of that Jeff Green type thing, mentality that Denver had from him, a veteran leader that can play the 3-4, has molded more now into a 4 with the way the game's going. Athletic enough to still get in the paint and do some things. They brought in Magruder as well, which was an interesting one because Clay got into it with him a couple of years ago and said that he's going to be out of the league soon, so they've brought him in. I'm sure they'll have a bit of a laugh about that when they go out to eat together. Moses Moody obviously will crack the rotation with his shooting, but I can't bet against them. I think they'll be in the mix, and that's why I put them at 5 pro.
Yeah, they're a good team. I mean, without question. I think they're still going to, if not right off the bat by All-Star break, I think right off the bat, to be honest, I think CP is going to be in the starting lineup. I think they're going to go with CP, Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, and Green,
Okay.
bringing Looney off the bench. In my opinion, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I think that they're going to have a lot of matchup problems, give teams a lot of issues with that CP, that Chris Paul, Steph Curry sort of combination, and just being able to play make and be able to stretch the floor out and just find people. I think they're tough. Obviously they're starting 5. And then the second unit, I think, look, Kuminga is going through growing pains, right? And when you're young and everyone telling you how good you are and you thinking that you could just take the league by storm. Look, we've both been around players that have no business being in the NBA thinking that they're going to be all-stars in 2 years. I've worked out players that were $50,000 guaranteed deals in the summer saying that I'm going to sign a max contract in 2 years. It's insane how players think. And then you figure things out. Look, you're in a championship organization, one of the best teams in the organizations in the history of the sport. And I think he's probably figuring out that, look, I can't die on this hill of being somebody who's tough to deal with. I have to sort of get along with people. I got to learn the system. I got to be able to earn their trust to be able to play. And then I'll build out this sort of career for myself. I think Andrew Wiggins sort of went through something, and now Andrew Wiggins is much more skilled and much more talented than Kuminga, early on in his career. But I think Wiggins had to go through those growing pains, leaving Minnesota and then going to Golden State and then figuring out how to truly be a pro and how to truly sort of be a winning player. And I think now, he's 17-5. His value's gone up tremendously since he got to Golden State. I think Kuminga's sort of got to get to that same track and be like, look, he's made a lot of great leaps. If you watch him in the preseason, this year and last year, it's completely different. And I think he could really help their team. That second unit is going to be interesting. The way I have it would be Peyton, Moody, Kuminga, Saric, Looney. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm not, but I think that it'll be interesting. You don't have a ton of offense with that. Like Saric could stretch the floor. Looney gives you toughness and rebounding. Gary Payton gives you defense. Moody gives you a little bit of offense. And I'll tell you what, they've got a really good young player they drafted. Bill Duffy represents him. Brandon Pozemski. Really crafty guard, tough, plays with a lot of confidence, could, going through the lane, running hooks, tough. I think he's a pretty good player. He's sort of like a DiVincenzo type of guy, tough kid, plays hard, could probably give them end of the rotation minutes. They're going to be good. They're experienced. I think they could give you a lot of different lineups and a lot of different looks, but it'll be an interesting look. And, Draymond and all that stuff. So hopefully things could go well for them. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they're a top 5 team, and I think they could a 5 or 6 team. I think they could compete for some things.
Same, can't doubt them. The championship merit, you can't buy that. 6 for me was Sacramento. They were your 4. Surprise year for them last season. Young, well coached. They played with a really good pace. I think they had the number 1 pace in the league, I believe. Offensive rating, I might be getting those confused, but I know they were number 1 offensive rating or pace, but they got it up there. They took good open shots for the most part. I think they'll still be very competitive. They'll be in the mix. They'll continue to build on this. But yeah, I just don't think they have enough as far as getting into that top four. I mean, you do. I don't. I just think that the West, and it's a coin flip. They could be 5, they could be 4, but they had a really good year last year. You just hope they build on it, and they deserve to build on it. They were the 3 seed last season. Did a tremendous job just channeling that energy and that momentum into what they are now. They picked up JaVale McGee. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox still there with Kevin Huerter, Sabonis, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray. Devon Mitchell will still play big minutes off the bench for him. So Trey Lyles actually had a pretty influential role for them coming over in the trade in 2022 from Detroit. So I don't know much about the younger guys or even the guys that they drafted. Jalen Slauson, number 54 pick in last year's or in the past draft, and that was kind of it as far as draft, right, bro? They didn't have any first round picks, did they?
No, they picked up their biggest pickup, Bogues, in my opinion, was Sasha Vezenkov. The MVP of the EuroLeague, played in Greece last year and just really good. I mean, really solid, like a Nocioni type.
Yep.
Could play 3, could play 4, could make shots, just tough and gritty. Loved watching him, all year last year in the EuroLeague package. So, they're interesting. Can they keep it up? They got a really good, good unit, good group. Fox is their best player. They got shot making with Herter and Murray and Harrison Barnes, and then he play with Sabonis, and just sort of the way they play. Their second unit's decent. Lyles and Vezenkov. I think JaVale McGee and Alex Len will probably battle out for that backup center spot. Davion Mitchell, plays hard, so it'll be interesting. Malik Monk gives him a little bit of flair off the bench. It'll be an interesting group. Like last year, they took some teams by storm. Obviously, teams will scout them and sort of adjust a little bit and see what they do. But I really like Vezenkov. I think he could really help them, off the bench with Malik Monk and some of the guys they have. So it'll be interesting. I have them pretty high. Again, sometimes like you punch teams in the mouth, they figure you out, and then you're not as good the next year. But I think they got youth. They've got Mike Brown's a solid coach. They got toughness, and they've been together, and they're just going to get better, I think, and just sort of grind some things out. So it'll be interesting.
It will be, but they'll be in the mix. That's just the way they play, the pace, well coached. 7, I got Dallas. I think a full preseason with Kyrie and Luka, they can make a little bit of noise. I do like their acquisitions. Now, depth chart on ESPN has Oliver Maxence Prosper and Derek Lively, the second starting in the 4 and the 5. I don't know about that. I think, Doncic, Irving, I think Graham Williams will start, but at the 4, I think then your 3 is Josh Green or Hardaway. And I don't know about Lively, a lot about those two guys, Lively and Maxence Prosper. You can probably talk more about them. But I think beyond that, you got Dwight Powell's an insurance policy because Lively is a young fella. If he doesn't fit in or he has growing pains, you can move Powell in, and he's a solid veteran that'll fit into any lineup. And then you obviously got the outlier of Maxi Kleber. Dante Exum, big pickup for him. I think he's going to be a real solid piece for him. The depth chart has him 3rd in line behind Jaden Hardy. I don't know. I think Dante Exum could take some of those minutes, even at the 2 at times. I think he's very, very good defensively, and I think Fever's just slowed him down. I think Fever's just, he doesn't look as panicked out there. And albeit, this is a kid that came in, not a lot of basketball, didn't go to college, came from playing the Australian high school system, which isn't the greatest, playing against, a lot of schools out there in Canberra, and he needed time to grow and time to figure things out. And he had some injuries early in Utah, couldn't really establish footing there. They signed him on that extension early on, and then he was out of the league. But Fever's done him wonders. That going overseas and playing EuroLeague, it just seems like he's so much more poised and he doesn't get sped up anymore, gets to his spot. So I'm looking forward to see how he fits in with this lineup. But yeah, I like Dallas. I think they'll be solid. I think there is a lot invested in those younger guys that we mentioned, but I think they'll be in the mix, pro.
Yeah, I have them. I have at the end of the play-in, and look, it's just the West is really good, and that's the thing. And when they made the trade for Kyrie at the last year, I thought that they would look good at times and they wouldn't look good at times, and it's going to take an off season, a preseason, a training camp, all of that to sort of get that thing going. With those two players, look, they're 2 high-level players. And, I have got Doncic number 1 in the league. I think Doncic is the best player in the league, in my opinion. And you put him with Kyrie, two guys that can make plays for other people. They could really score. They could score in different ways. Is their supporting cast good enough to sort of carry them through the West is the toughest thing. I like Lively and Prosper. I know they got a lot invested in those guys, but I think that, in my opinion, like Dwight Powell, talent-wise, obviously individually talented, not as talented as a player that you would want at the 5 as far as a rim protector or a scorer. But what he gives you is, to go along with Doncic and Irving, one of the better lob threats in the league, really good defender in the post, like one of the better 5 defenders as far as solid team defending guys in the league, as far as his basketball IQ. I mean, Grant Williams is a really good pickup, for them, a guy who could really shoot, could probably shoot close to 40%, if not more, from the 3. Toughness guy, tough guy. I think it's going to be good. Tim Hardaway has just been a little bit inconsistent, but he's been around the block for a while. Their second unit is up and down. Like, Lively might start, Powell might come off the bench, who knows, the 5. But look, Seth Curry and Jaden Hardy. Look, Curry's one of the better knockdown shooters in the league. You got him coming off the bench. You got Josh Green, who could really give you some energy. Maxi Kleber is a guy that could really give you fits. Now, Maxi could play some 5 for them. He's someone who can guard, he could switch.
Or a small lineup
with open threes.
Grant and Kleber together could work. Williams can play some 4-5 as well. Small ball lineups, your Golden States of the world, all that kind of stuff. They could throw some funky lineups out there.
Yeah, and you got, look, Lively's good. He's a guy who could run the floor. He could rim protect. I think he's more, they compared to Tyson Chandler. I think it's easy when you draft a guy that you always compare him to somebody who played, at that, team. An unbelievable player that played at your position from the team. And I think it's not fair to him. Tyson Chandler was one of the best defenders I've seen in 15 years when he really had it going at a high level. And he was such a phenom coming into the league. I don't see Lively as a phenom like that. I see him more of a Wendell Carter type. I think he's a better shooter than people, give him credit for. He's big. He seems like he's sort of got a high basketball IQ. He'll get it. I think he'll take his bumps, bruises early, foul trouble, and things like that. But I see him more of as like a roller, not the defensive player Tyson was, but a roller guy who could, roll to space and then make a corner 3. And I think he could do some things. And then the Prosper guy, he reminded me of DeAndre Hunter a little bit. He's got some offensive power. They're talking about his defense and his ability to stop. I think because they lost Dorian, Finney-Smith, and the Kyrie trade, I think that they want to compare somebody to him. And he's got some, don't get me wrong, he plays hard. He runs the floor. I think his shooting will get better. He's a good player. And then, I think he'll fit in. The problem is you got Hardaway, Hardy, Green, Grant Williams is going to play some 3. Where do you fit him in? They'll find minutes for him, but where are you going to find those minutes? And then you got Dante Exum, a guy that you could really trust, a solid player who, I think like we talked about, like you touched on, the FIBA stuff in the EuroLeague was really good for him to be just solid player now. And, he doesn't have that, I don't think he's got the weight of being this phenom anymore. I think he just could settle into his role. He could settle you down. He could make an open shot. He could play defense. He'd give you basketball IQ, make the extra pass, play off the ball, and help you as that, I think he'll be at the end of your rotation. And I think you could go some different lineups and different looks. And then you got guys like Derek Jones and Rashawn Holmes that's still right there at the end, probably, your third unit. So he give you sort of some different looks. I think they're going to expect a lot out of Jaden Hardy, to be honest with you. I think he gave them some good looks at times, and I think he's just going to get better and bigger and stronger. And, it'll be an interesting thing. But with that Kyrie and Luka lineup, man, you could throw anybody out there and they can make plays. They could throw lobs. They could score. They could make shots. They're going to be tough. The question is Kyrie going to get bored? And is he going to, it's not, I don't think it's a coachability issue. I don't think it's a competitive thing. I think a lot of times he doesn't get in trouble, but I think he gets bored and he gets frustrated. He gets home from a flight at 3 a.m. He turns on that fucking Instagram live, and then all bets are off, and he'll go off on tangents. And I think that's where he gets himself in the most trouble. He just has to sort of look. Everyone's going to give you their 2 cents of what he should be doing. I don't know what the fuck he should be doing. All I know is he should just be competing, trying to be the best player he can, try to win as many games for Dallas, and then get his career back on track where, you could be a little bit more dependable. But he's got to play games, Bogues. I got, his last few years, I think I got it in front of me here, like as far as like his games played, 60, 29, 54, 20.
Well, some were during the last due to the vax mandate. Obviously, the other one was where he went out on didn't he go on the BLM excursion for a couple of months, or he did
something?
He had leave from the team, and then he was doing like a BLM Zoom video party thing. I don't know. He went to a party. Like
it's never talent.
There was a bunch going on. I agree, and I think that's why I see off season with Luka, they actually proper training camp. I'm hoping it revitalizes things, and people not forgotten about him, but he's not up there with KD and Steph in that talk anymore, and hopefully that pisses him off enough to get to there. And I think they'll be good. I think the Kyrie things and Luka staying healthy. He had a really good off season. I think playing FIBA ball, and if he stays healthy, those two guys are the start, medium, and end of your team. If one of those guys is hurt or half in, half out mentally, you're in some trouble.
Bogues, and I think that his weight fluctuates like Post Malone's does. They were both overweight. Now they're both skinny as hell. I think there's a lot to be said for that. The Luka and Post Malone tangent. I think you should look that up. Also, I think that with Kyrie, it's just, the guy's so good. He's so good. And he just, hopefully they could put everything together because they got a lot of good assets there. And you can go forward, and I think they're going to have some cap relief, if I'm not mistaken. Just give me 2 seconds. Salary cap. Nah, they're not going to have any fucking cap relief. They go from like 146 to 144. So they're not going to get relief for a little bit to add another player. So they're going to have to sort of continue to develop their guys, use their exceptions wisely going forward. But with those two guys, man, I think, I think you're as good as they are. He's got to stop. Kyrie just has to just go through a year where nothing happens, man. Like no distractions, and let's just go forward with that. And
this will be the year, bro. This will be the year to stay out of trouble.
Hopefully, man.
New Orleans.
Hopefully.
I had New Orleans at 8. This is all. I think a lot of this is on Zion and his health. I think they're a young, fun team to watch. I enjoyed them last season, even though Zion didn't play a lot of the time. I think now that he's somewhat healthy, still looks very heavy, but somewhat healthy. I think they're a pretty deep young team. They've got a lot of good pieces. They're projecting starters: CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Herbert Jones, Zion Williamson, and Valanciunas. I think Valanciunas is going to be a 20-minute player for a max. I think they're going to go small ball lineups a lot with Zion at the 5, even Larry Nance Jr. at the 5. They've got Cody Zeller as their third string big that can fit in there. But I think they look best with Zion at the 5. And I know early in his career he didn't like playing that position, but when you put him at the 5, then you can circle in an Ingram at the 4 with Herb Jones, CJ, maybe throw in an Alvarado or a Dyson Daniels. They got Trey Murphy III who can score at times. They got a good mix. Herbert Jones, obviously I mentioned as well. Najee Marshall had a decent season for him. So I think they'll be okay. It's going to all go pending health. And I think it's two different rosters. If you've got Zion healthy, I think you play a little bit differently. And then if he's not healthy with this roster, it's a different style of game. So they need to figure that out. And I thought last season, they had two different rosters. They had a roster that was grinded out, kind of a lot of pick and roll ISO ball with CJ McCollum in and Valanciunas. And then when you saw those two guys go out of the lineup and you had it was just pace. It was just their bench lineup with Ingram in it was just pace. So they got to figure out how they want to play. It's a hard thing to do when you got, Zion and Valanciunas and whatnot. But I like them pushing the pace a little bit more, but unfortunately they got two guys in their potential starting lineup that play better at a slower pace. But I have them at my 8, bro.
Yeah, Bogues, I mean, you really want to say it's sort of like talking about Kyrie with Dallas. You want to say this is a year for Zion to be healthy and to play, but I just haven't seen any. I haven't seen any proof of it. You know, we talk about it every offseason. We talk about it every training camp. This is the year. This is the year. How can you continue to bet on that? You know, and that's the problem. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay motivated to keep the weight off once the season starts? And that's the biggest problem. They've got an interesting lineup with the scoring of McCollum and Ingram. Herbert Jones can make shots. Now, Trey Murphy's out 10 to 12 weeks. Well, not anymore. He's probably out 4 to 6 weeks now. You know, he had that meniscus tear, and I think back in September.
Yeah.
Love Valanciunas, but you're right. I think they're going to play some small ball lineups. I think you have to play Zion on 5, to be honest, you know, to be effective with that group. I don't think he shoots the ball well enough to, you know, I don't think he shoots the ball well enough and consistently could be on the perimeter like that. I think he's more of a roller, you know, post-up guy, elbow ISO guy, playing in transition. It's just interesting how do you sort of balance all that. Their second unit, you get some toughness. Look, they were a good team last year. They were solid. You know, the Alvarado, Daniels, Trey Murphy, you know, when he gets healthy, Nance, you know, then you got like Cody Zeller. You got a decent group. But the Zion thing is it's just hard to factor in, right? Because he's just been hurt constantly. And that's the thing. Like, how do you really keep going to it and being like, yeah, you know, he's going to be there. I mean, 24 games, 61 games, sit out the season. And then, you know, in 21, 22 and last year, 29 games. Like, it's just like, where is this evidence that he's going to sort of turn the corner? And, you know, is his game going to turn the corner too? Because now I think for health wise, not only you got to keep the weight off, but also less stress in your legs. You can't just be a high flyer all the time, or I think injury is going to be following him, you know, constantly. So I think he's got to really change his game, you know, a little bit, not completely, but like he's got to add a jump shot. He's got to add a mid post game. He's got to add, it can't just be finishing at the rim, lobs and rolls the whole time. It's got to, you know, find the floater, find some other ways to sort of impact the game as well. So it'll be interesting, Bogues, but I think it's going to be hard for me to really turn the corner and say, yeah, you know, from being a career sort of injury prone player, he's just going to turn it around. And as my mentor, Chris Wallace taught me in Boston, people, you know, always revert back to who they really are. You could be a guy who's overweight his whole career, come in great shape, but most likely you're just going to revert back. So I think it's hard for me to say this team's going to be really good or could really depend on him, you know, going forward, but who knows?
You had them out. You had them at 11, yeah?
Yeah, I had them out. I had them at 11.
Okay. All right, 9 for me, which was your 4, I believe. OKC, this is probably our biggest disparity. I've got them at 9. I still think they're not there yet. They are getting deeper and younger as we speak. SGA at the point, or Giddy / SGA. For some reason, ESPN have Giddy at the 2, but SGA handles more in the half court for scoring, but I think Giddy's still your point. They got Dort at the 3, Jalen Williams at the 4, Chet Holmgren at the 5. I'm questioning the Chet Holmgren at the 5. He's played well so far, but some of these bigger, stronger 5s, even if Zion, could cause some problems for him. Who else we got? Osmani Dieng's been pretty decent for him. Micic, interesting to see if he plays and where he gets in the rotation there. He's come over from Europe, whether he gets minutes, whether he doesn't. Isaiah Joe, decent. Kason Wallace, back up 2. So Kenrick Williams played a little bit last season. Robertson Earl, another big center for him. And where does Pokusevski go? I mean, now that they got Chet Holmgren, they invested a lot in him a couple of seasons ago and tried to really blood him and play minutes. It was clear he wasn't ready, but they were letting him go with his ups and downs. On these depth charts, it looks like he's completely fallen out of the rotation, but we'll have to see that. I mean, this is just an ESPN depth chart, but yeah, you've got them at 4. You're very high on them, Pro.
Yeah, Bogues, I think I had them at 5 actually.
5. Sack at 4, sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, I think that again, when you're talking about teams and you talk about rankings in the league, I don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs. Obviously, they're young. They've never been there. It's really hard to say, okay, they're going to do what have you. I think that they're young. They're not really going to sit a lot of guys. Maybe Holmgren just for, just to be safe. But they're young. They're hungry. They got talent. I think Giddey's one of the stars, going forward in the league. I think that, to me, he's a different look than Shy, that SGA is. I think he's one of the best passers in the league, and he's got size, and he really puts you in great position. He really knows where and when to give it to players. He could elevate a lot of people's value. Almost Jason Kiddish when he was with New Jersey, being able to just know where and when guys are going to be. SGA's 31-5 and 5-5, and guy's one of the more talented young players in the league. They just play together. They're young. They remind me of the OKC team. They're different, but they remind me just how tough they are, not afraid of anybody, and how they play together. How that OKC team with Durant and those guys early on in in 2010, they're just young and they're not afraid. And Holmgren, look, just like Victor, if you could stay healthy, he is very scary. He is very scary. He moves like a god. He could go by you off the dribble. He could shoot the ball. He gives you rim protection. He's really scary. And you throw him with Giddey and SGA and Jalen Williams, and that second unit's a little bit interesting. Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, the big kid from Arkansas, he's solid. Misic is interesting. I watched him play today, against the Lakers. I didn't love him. He's like stubby, but I watched him play, in the EuroLeague with Shane Larkin in Turkey, and like the guy's a warrior. He could give you shooting off the bench, scoring off the bench. He's tough. He gives you basketball IQ and just grittiness, and he's a good player. Maybe they're not deep enough or have that second unit to really, match up with the juggernauts of the league. But I do think that, I think that their top five is really tough to stop because they're young, they play hard. They got to get a little bit more consistent shooting. Giddey's not a shooter. Dort, he's up and down sometimes with his shooting. He's at 33% as a three-point shooter. Jalen Williams, 35. Holmgren's a three-point threat. So I think going forward, they need to get better shooting the ball. But, Giddey and Alexander, their size and their ability to make plays. Dort's a great on-the-ball defender. Jalen Williams is a really solid, good young player. And Chet Holmgren, if he keeps on developing, could be an MVP candidate in 5 years from now or even less, just the way the game's going, as far as, those big guys that could handle the ball like guards that could shoot the ball and do what they do. I just think they're young, record-wise in the league, Bogues. They're just going to be young. You don't have to sit them. They're going to fight to the death. They're not going to be like, fuck this. We're in Golden State in February down 15. They're not going to give a fuck. They're going to challenge you, for 48 minutes. I think they're a really good team. So, it'll be interesting. And then Pochowski, I don't really see how he sort of fits in, just because I just don't, his game's just sort of weird. He's 36% from the three, but what is he? He's really skinny. He's smart. He could pass, he could play out of the short roll, but I think going forward, like you're probably going to move him for a future pick, going forward, because they're going to have some salary problems. They got SGA already. Giddey's going to be a max player. Holmgren's going to be a max player if he stays healthy. So like they're going to have some issues that they had when they had to trade Harden. Like who do you keep? Who do you move on from? You're going to have these tax aprons going forward for them, but they're a very good young team.
Yeah, I just think the experience thing, I still think they're a piece away, like a good veteran second tier star.
Right.
Maybe a Harrison Barnesy for what he does for Sacramento, or maybe a little bit better than that. And I still think they're a year away from competing for a top 6 spot, in my opinion. But that's an interesting one that you pick. We'll see how that goes at the end of the season. My last one's a controversial one. I put the Lakers at 10. I know they got better, but I just think it's a clunky fit. I don't know. You got D'Angelo Russell at the 1, Reeves, which everyone loves, at 2, LeBron, Vanderbilt, and Anthony Davis. My question is Anthony Davis's health, LeBron James's health. LeBron's, pushing 40. Or how old is he? Is he 40 yet? He's almost 40.
He's 38.
38, going on 39. And, obviously not as good as he once was, especially at the defensive end. Does take possessions off, but he's still obviously one of the best players of all time. But he's going to play, you got a 38-year-old going on 39. He's going to play 35 minutes a night still. You're still relying on that. Gabe Vincent was a good pickup for him, brings just some toughness off the bench for them, can knock down the open three. Hachimura's been better. I think he's shooting the three ball better. Christian Wood, can you rely on him over the course of a season? Very, very inconsistent. We'll get his numbers, but I think the numbers that he gives up at the other end, and I don't think he's the best with, playing within team systems. That's what it felt like in Dallas. Cam Reddish gets a second chance or third or fourth or fifth chance with the Lakers. Don't know if he'll play a lot. Jackson Hayes they brought in as another backup big and a good insurance policy if Davis does go down. Well, I think age and injuries is the big outlier for them. I'm not sure how this fits on paper, whether it all goes together. I do like the Vincent acquisition, and that's probably the only one that I really love. I don't love the Wood acquisition. I don't think that moves the needle for him. Prince will play a little bit of minutes for him here and there, and the rest in their depth, I don't think it's going to really have their fingerprints on much wins or losses. Their starting five is a lot of big names, but I'm not sure how that all works, bro. So I'm having them as my 10 again, and they were playing last season, don't forget, people, and they still made it to the second round, right? And was the second round or third round last season? I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
They didn't make the conference finals.
The conference finals from playing. There you go. They lost to Denver. So, I don't think that the irregular season matters for them as much as other teams. I think they're just that veteran team we can beat anyone. If we're a 7 seed or a 10 seed, we can get there. So I think they'll be towards the lower half of the playoff run, pro.
Yeah, they're interesting, Bogues. Obviously, with if they could stay healthy, James and Davis and D'Angelo Russell gives you scoring, and Reeves can give you, can you continue to get better? The problem is the ball can be in his hands at times, but it's going to be out of his hands at times. It's really hard to get looks, in that lineup with Russell, James, and Davis in the same lineup, if you're Reeves or someone else trying to get the ball on a consistent basis. I really like Jared Vanderbilt. I've been talking since they got him in the trade deadline last year. I think he gives them a lot of versatility, a lot of defense, a lot of rebounding, not a lot of offense, but, he gives them it gives them that one player that they're missing, like that defensive presence, that doing the things that Davis doesn't want to do physically, banging guys and, defensively and playing hard, protecting the rim like that. I think that he gives you a lot of that. Their second unit, with Gabe Vincent and Prince and Hachimura, he can give you some things. I don't really trust Christian Wood. He's one of those radioactive guys that just, you never know what you're going to get. The Shaq and the Fool just keeps on coming when he gets the ball in his hands. Sort of like early on JaVale McGee, like you don't know what you're going to get. Hachimura really made a big push in the playoffs. Taurean Prince is good with just being solid. I like Gabe Vincent, but he's really not going to move the needle. Like, he had a great playoff. He did really well for them. But I think he's very limited at what he can do. He can make shots. He's tough. I'll tell you one player, Bogues, that's going to really, I think, by the end of the year, you're going to really be impressed by the way he plays. And I think he could outplay Prince and Vincent down the stretch or down the line. Maybe not even this year. Maybe it's next year. But a kid named Max Christie, young kid, second-year player, was a second-round pick from them 2 drafts ago. He's been playing well, averaging about 10 points a game. Really long, really athletic, can shoot the ball, can guard, gives you a little bit more juice than Vincent or Prince. I think obviously you could trust Vincent and Prince because they're veterans and things like that. They're tough for me. Like, you read ESPN or you watch ESPN, you got guys saying they're going to win the West and they're going to go to the finals. I don't see that here. I see them as a good team. I see them, at times they're tough to guard, because of Davis, because of James, because of, Russell and pick and rolls. But I don't know if they're that. I mean, the West is so good, so good. And I don't know, maybe they do what they did in the
playoffs. I mean, they were a different team in the playoffs, and they had a bit of, had a bit of momentum. In the regular season, it just seems like they cruise. They just cruise so much, like, and then they put themselves in a situation where they're going to fight from playing. But all credit to them, they made the conference finals. But if they play with that mentality of even though they got swept by Denver, I felt like they played Denver tough for the most part. It wasn't. I don't think it was a sweep. It didn't feel like a sweep. They still had to work. They worked Denver. That Denver had to work to get those wins. And Jokic had to hit some tough shots late in shot clocks, the 1-footers and all that. So they made them work for that sweep, even though it was a sweep. But I just think that in the regular season, man, they just kind of cruise. They just cruise through it. All right, we're 10-15. We'll turn it on eventually. And they never really turned it on. And then they became a play-in. I think that's their issue.
You know what they remind me of, Bogues? They remind me of the Kobe Shaq team when it was the end of their run and they were just sort of coasting. They just coasted. Shaq was getting big. He was out of shape, but like he would play himself in shape, and they would just try to get it done when they get to the playoffs. But it just goes to show you, and it's the same thing when we're trying to pick these teams like in the ranking system. Like a team like Oklahoma City, I don't think they're going to do well in the playoffs when they get there, but they're going to be good in the regular season. For the same
Cleveland
thing for
and
the
East.
Lakers. Yeah, I think they're going to be like, to me, I think the Lakers will be like 7-8 or whatever, but they're dangerous in the playoffs because of if you get James Davis and Russell healthy, and then guys like Reeves can make shots, Vincent could make shots, Hachimura, Vanderbilt plays hard. If Christian Wood's still on the team by then, like he could help you a little bit, like, that you never know. You never know. So it's an interesting deal. I don't expect them to really be there at the conference finals again. I just think the West is too good. But who the fuck knows, Bogues?
Yep. All right. Our last five. We'll do Minnesota briefly, just because you had them in your 8, in your 10, I believe. People have them higher than me. I have them at 11. I just can't see the Towns Gobert dynamic working. I can't. The Towns rumors are circling again for the Knicks. So I don't see them two working. Gobert's not going to play a bench role or less than 20 minutes a night. What do you do there? Towns good at the 4, creates a mismatch, not great at the 4 defensively because you got him chasing guys all over the court. I think the Edwards versus Towns thing could get spicy as well. Whose team is it? I think it's clear it's going to be Edwards' team, or if it already isn't, to those that think it already isn't, I think it's going to be Edwards' team long term. You always see with these young teams that becomes a push and pull thing, and I just don't know. I just think they're high with a lot of people, but for me, I just don't. I think they're gonna have to make more trades, but they can't do anything. You've touched on it. That Gobert deal is absolute suicide for them. Making that trade, their depth chart. I mean, Conley's solid. I love Conley. Edwards at the 2, McDaniels at the 3, Towns and Gobert. That's the Towns and Gobert thing. Naz Reid's a solid backup. Kyle Anderson's an okay backup off the bench as well. They got Nickel Alexander-Walker, Shake Milton. They got Jordan McLaughlin at the backup point. But yeah, I think the big problem for them is the Gobert-Towns dynamic, and then on top of that, I think Edwards is an outspoken, flamboyant, happy to say, hey, this is my team, and I think Towns is he's a talker as well. So I just feel like something's going to happen there, pro.
I think Edwards is going to be. I think he has a chance to be All NBA third team.
Yep.
I think he's the third best 2 guard in the league. I think he's a top 15 talent. He was great with Team USA this summer, and he's just been getting better and better than I thought he was in the draft. I do agree with you. There is some dynamics that's a little bit off with Towns and Gobert trying to play together, but and Towns gives you a little bit of offense. He obviously can stretch the floor with the shooting. I just don't like the dynamic, no doubt about it. And I think there's some other teams that could probably overdo it with those guys. But
I think you're almost better off just moving Towns. Keep Gobert as your 5. Got a great rim protector and rebounder. Can play off pick and roll with Edwards and whatnot. Move Towns for something that fits your roster better, because that's not going to work together. And then revamp that way rather than. And you can't move Gobert really. Like you said it previously. That's a very hard deal to move.
Bogues, I don't know if you can move Towns either. Like 36, 52, 56, 60, player option for 64.
Fair point, but easier to move than Gobert. And I think a team like New York that needs, The problem is you got to eat Randall and something else to get it right. But yeah, man, I mean, I think he has more value even with a bad contract than Gobert with a bad contract. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the lack of offense down the stretch, the free throw shooting and things for Gobert really hurts. And that's the thing, like for Gobert, it's unbelievable, Bogues, that, and you see it all the time in the NBA. He has no offense at all, no post moves, can't shoot free throws. You would think you're making $41 million. You go in the offseason, they're talking about how great Utah's player development is. The guy doesn't have a fucking post move 10 years in the league. Like, I don't know if I could praise you as a player development team if the fucking guy who's making $40 million a year can't make a fucking jump hook or can't make a face-up jump shot from 7 feet. Why not hire a shooting coach in the offseason? Whoever the fucking shot doctor was for Utah in his 10 years should be sued for malpractice because the guy, I mean, it's unbelievable. The one thing keeping you off the floor is that you can't make free throws, and you're shooting that dismal from the free throw line at 64%.
It was 64 last, and that was better year for him, but
not too bad.
But even the post up thing, it's not so much post up thing. You can't really throw it to him, like on the perimeter. Like you have non-shooting bigs, like you have a Plumlee or a Zubats. They can still Plumlee can at least make plays, right? Zubats can go into a handoff and roll. Like you don't want even Gobert touching the ball near the 3-point line. So to your point, late game, the only role he has is screen, roll, and go stand in the dunker. It's just like, so it is tough.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on.
It's tough.
Don't get into it too much. Last four, we're going to do one line each, all right? So I'll go first. Houston, I think they'll be a solid bad team like Orlando last season. I think they'll be well coached. They'll be a solid bad team, but they're going to be 12. Spurs and Utah rebuilds. Utah will be well coached. They won't be any good. San Antonio, same thing, well coached. Let Wemby fly, mass minutes, let him play through stuff. 15, Portland, full rebuild. I don't think Portland win more than 20 games, bro. Give me your thoughts on those four.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm not going to take too long at this at all. Just like, with the last few teams, like the Utah, the Portlands, the Houstons, the San Antonios. Look, Utah, Collins, and they made a couple of moves here and there that they did well last year. I don't think they're really, if I'm them, I'm not really trying to win all that much. I don't know what they're going to do with Collins and how they're going to do. They'll be okay. Portland rebuild. I think that, I like the moves they made. Obviously they're going forward with Scoot Henderson and Simons, and DeAndre Ayton. I think they're going to probably get rid of Grant. They'll probably keep Thibault. They're okay, for the future. Robert Williams, can you stay healthy? I like some of the players they sort of added and things, but they're really not trying to win. And then Houston Elite AAU, I call them because they're a fucking AAU team. Obviously with the players that they acquired, obviously with Van Vliet and Dylan Brooks, they'll be better. Obviously our guy Wandale's the fucking best, so I'm glad they got him. They'll be better.
He'll have some stories for us, that's for sure. He'll have some stories from that locker room.
Yeah, and then San Antonio, man. I'll use my one fucking line, and you know me, I don't jerk anybody off, but especially when they're a young player. But I'll tell you what, that Wembanyama, man. I was gonna wait. I didn't say anything in the summer league when he struggled a little bit. Didn't say anything good, bad, or indifferent. But I'll tell you what, he's got I've never seen a player this young that had unbelievable poise like he's got. Like, it just doesn't seem like much bothers him. He's going to go through his ups and downs and things, but I'll tell you what, like, his ability to pass the ball, first of all, I think is his best skill. The guy has great vision. He moves like a god. His shooting will get better. His physical will get better. But, like, he's got unbelievable fucking poise, and he's unbelievable to watch. He seems like a great kid. So going forward, Vassell just signed that huge deal for them. So, going forward, it'll be Vassell and Victor's team with Vassell and trying to move some pieces around. So they'll be rebuilding. Probably they want to lose again. They'll probably shut fucking things down to try to get another fucking number one pick to put him with Victor. But they'll be an interesting team. They'll try to lose it. So they'll probably be either second or last.
I agree. Yep. And I'm looking forward to he'll be for one of the worst teams in the league. There'll be a lot of people watching those games, which is always good to see just because of Wembanyama. All right, moving on. Dabble social betting experience where you can follow anyone from your best mate all the way to me, Andrew Bogut, all one word. Give me a follow on there. Dabble app at the App Store, all one word. You can copy bets, jump into the banner channel, go back and forth with some other punters that have some like-minded or not so like-minded thoughts about bets. But download the app, dabble socially and gamble responsibly. NBL Pro, real quick, 2-0 weekend for the Sydney Kings, beating both Brisbane and the Perth, the Red Army from over there out west. Everyone loves beating them. Brisbane go 0-2, back to reality, no Baynes. They lose both their games this weekend. Perth go 0-2, which is just beautiful to watch. Everyone loves to see that. Outside of Perth, they lose to Melbourne and the Sydney Kings. Melbourne go 2-0. Dellavedova with a pretty bad concussion in the game last night. He took a charge. Guy went up for a layup, and as he was on the floor, the guy fell and his knee pinned Delly's head on the floor, basically straight down from up high. I believe that was that Adelaide? I'm not sure who that was, but pretty sure it might have been Adelaide. We'll double check on that. But Adelaide get there, win against the Illawarra Hawks. Hawks go 0-2. Tasmania go down in a thriller to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, but they go 1-1. And Tasmania, no more underdog talk from you. I think you're the championship favourites, in my opinion. I think they're the most well poised at this point of the season. I'm sick of hearing the underdog tag, but they are.
How's my boy Scott Roth doing?
Good. Smoking a lot of cigars, but they're doing well. They took a tough loss. They could have won that game against Southeast Melbourne, but they're the championship favourites in my opinion.
Great. Awesome.
Moving on from that, NBL versus NBA games. They've been ugly, pro. They've been ugly. They've been 50-point losses in the first two games for the Taipans and the Breakers. Taipans just lost again by 20 or 30, I think, to the Raptors. Taipans was so short-handed, they had to have Alfred Payton suit up for him, pro. So I'm not sure if you saw that. They had some injuries and whatnot and some health issues, some sickness. But I think we're looking towards, are these games now net beneficial for the NBL? I think early on they had a really good net positive where it was an affiliation. It was you could talk NBA, NBL. I think there's now more organic talking points NBL, NBA than the games. I think, having players go over, Xavier Cooks and Jay Sean Tate and these Josh Giddey and these kind of guys, they're your talking points that have organically formed now. I don't think you need the forced NBL versus NBA stuff anymore, especially when you're going down 50 points. I don't think that's good for anyone. So I wonder if the league's going to look at that and revamp that now, where you have a natural pathway connection to the NBA now. You don't need that game anymore. See how that goes. Finishing on the Baynes thing, pro. A lot's gone on this week. There was, Aron Baynes getting 5 games. There was a tribunal here and whatnot. What I understand, Baynes was going to take time off. Regardless of the result of that suspension, he was going to take time off. Mental health, get away from the game, go take some time off and take a deep breath. That is why Brisbane did not appeal, because there was understanding there was going to be time off anyway. Brisbane want to put this as far behind them as they can. They thought if they appeal, it's just going to be more media attention, blah, 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 blah. I will still say that I think Aron Baynes getting 3 games for the altercation with Adam Ford and Ford not getting anything is wrong. So much so, I relayed exactly what I heard from a source last week. People got on me about it saying, well, Ford got off, you were wrong. Well, someone's leaked the tape from the security footage of the locker room, pro, and it was exactly as I described. It was Adam Ford kept pacing up and down the locker room at halftime. He says he does that every game. I'm not sure. Who knows? All I know is his excuse for waiting for a stat sheet doesn't fly with me, because after every game, after every halftime buzzer, I see assistant coaches waiting for the stat sheets at the scorer's table. So I don't know about that. But you clearly see Baynes coming out of their locker room to go to their meeting room. Ford then they're having words as they're walking by. There's clear contact, bro. Now, you give me your opinion honestly, but a player's fuming. You're a head coach. He's just steamed before halftime. You're opposing coach. Ford clearly grabs Aron Baynes' arm as they walk by. Now, it could have been a gesture that he says, just trying to have a chat to him, blah, blah. Clearly grabs his arm. More words are said. Baynes basically shoves him into a wall. Players run out because they hear the scuffle, they hear the yelling, they break it up. There's got to be something said for Ford putting his hands on Baynes. I don't care if it's a hair scratch. You don't put your hands on players, especially when they're steamed. Look, opposing coach might during a game give you a hug, you near their bench, or like, hey, back out of a huddle or whatever. But when a player's steamed like that, it's as a head coach, it's always a no-go. You don't touch opposing team players. I don't care if you've known them since childhood, whatever, right? That has led to the altercation. NBL has put out a statement that has nothing to do with the fact that I think their tribunal member completely botched, given
I read that.
Strictly Baynes 3 games and Ford nothing. NBL's statement has been, we're disappointed in the person who leaked the tape. So just don't say anything at that point, in my opinion. So I thought that was pretty silly by NBL. I think, someone leaked the tape, but you're going at that because it's made your tribunal member, which was supposed to be a panel of 3, Pro, the people that the way it works in Australia, they call it a tribunal. It goes to 3, generally some lawyers that have probably never played sport in their life, and they adjudicate, was your force necessary? Was the fuse you blew Aron necessary? No, these are your suspensions. Supposed to be 3. Media was invited. From what I understand, 20 minutes, 30 minutes before it was meant to go ahead, media got booted, and it ended up being a 1-panel member who then has decided all this. So lots to answer for there, Pro, but give me your thoughts about putting your hands on a player that's blatantly steaming already. You think that's right?
Well, Bogues, I don't know if your thoughts on this, but I think about 80% of professional coaches are not self-aware at all. I think they really struggle with self-awareness. And any assistant coach that's worth the shit, they know when a player is steaming, you just leave them the fuck alone. Especially
it's the head coach, Pro, by the way. Head coach, not assistant. Head coach.
What's up?
It's a head coach.
No.
Assistant.
I'm saying as a coach, that, especially if a guy you don't know and is not with your team, you leave him the fuck alone. Just let it go. At best, the only thing you say to him is, "Hey man, don't let it bother you. I get it. Just keep going. Just give him some cliche bullshit that head coaches give you, right? And move on." But I wouldn't even talk to the guy. I would just go. Stay out of the fucking way. It's like the Incredible Hulk. When you see him turning green, get the fuck out of there, man. Like, what are you doing? And Baynes is pissed, you could tell. So just leave it the fuck alone. Now you want to put hands on him and do whatever and agitate him even more, It should have been like a fucking cartoon. He should have, remember when you get punched in the face and you fucking like go outside the planet to the fucking out of the galaxy? It was a sitcom waiting to happen. Just stay the fuck away. But not to suspend the coach and suspend him. It's that's a tough road.
And I'll say this as well. Lat Mayen, I don't think he deserved a suspension. He didn't get ejected in the moment for the elbow. He got ejected after they checked it at halftime. They've then gone back and given him a game. I don't think that warranted a game. Look, they got in a little scuffle. He threw an elbow. That happens almost every game in basketball. Most times the elbows don't connect to the face, but it did. I think in a normal situation where Baynes doesn't have the blow a fuse and then everything else that happened after that, Mayen just gets ejected from that game and maybe gets a little fine or a suspended sentence, but I think they reacted and said, now we'll give you a game as well just to make it look good. I think the one they missed was Mayen shouldn't have got a game. Ford should have got a game and we all move on. But that's just, everyone has a different opinion. I know people on social media that were like, Ford got off, how do you feel now? And then the tape came out and said, it was barely a touch. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't set you off that much. Well, it's like we said last week, until you get punched in the face and you're steaming, everyone reacts differently. And all these people that are saying, well, this, well, that, well, this, Aron Baynes' reaction was not, shouldn't be condoned and should be condemned, and he didn't handle it right. And he'll tell you that. We're discussing the aftermath of a coach then pouring more fuel on the fire, and that's what we saw. But that's all over with for Brisbane, and hopefully they can move on and get back on the winner's track. Pro, fact or fake news before we let you go?
All right, Bogues, try to clear this one up. Okay, I got 3 here. Maybe I'll just do 2. Do you see a scenario where the Denver Nuggets does not make the conference final?
So the Denver Nuggets do
seeing
not.
that they lost those two guys in the second unit, do you see a scenario where they don't make the conference final?
Yeah, fact, I do. Based on the West being super deep, I think it's. I think they're are they a 80-20 favorite in most rounds? No, I think it's if they're a favorite in the Clippers or Golden State, it's probably a 60-40 favorite at this point. I think the West is just so deep, it's hard to pick. And I think they'll, there's all the rumors. I don't believe this stuff that Jokic didn't work out the whole offseason. I don't believe all that. Like, I think, look, is he coming in a bit out of shape? Potentially, but I think he's definitely worked out. I think that's all just kind of like just a bit of banter that he's saying, I haven't touched a basketball and this and that for 3 or 4 months. I don't know about that, but I think their home court will keep him in the mix. But I think there's every opportunity they don't make the conference finals just based on how deep the West is. Anything can happen. And then injuries, and they're not as deep as they were last season. And Bruce Brown, I think, fact, bro.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think that it's fact. Not enough's being spoken, in my opinion. I know I touched on it, and I won't touch on it. I would just sort of mention it. I don't think enough's being mentioned about the losses they had in the in the summer and what they replaced those losses with. Now, those young players will get better, no doubt, with getting more minutes and more opportunity. They're going to take their bumps, but this is a small window. You know this with championship teams. It could be a small window at times. And I think that there could definitely be situations where, with the Clippers and Phoenix and, even, Golden State and Sacramento and even the Lakers, and you have Memphis pretty high, if they can get past not having Morant in their lineup, it'll be an interesting deal.
Agree.
Okay. Do you see a situation where Jokic wins the MVP this year?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't. I'm going to say Jokic does not. So, what is that? Fake news, I guess.
Fake
Jokic
news.
does not. Yeah, does not win it. I just think it's fatigued and played out now. I think Luka's going to, like I said last season, I think Luka will be in the mix if he stays healthy. If he plays more than 65 games, Luka will most likely be the MVP, in my opinion, if he's out there on the court healthy. Embiid will still be in the mix. Kawhi Leonard, sneaky, probably not. They got too much talent for someone to have inflated stats on their team. But I'll say he won't. I think it's just going to fizzle out. And I think they will. I just don't. I think they. It's not the Dallas Mavericks when they won that chip and then kind of just fizzled out and haven't had a whole lot of success since then. But I don't think Denver will go that extreme with it. But I don't think it's going to be an easy bounce back to the conference finals and finals for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the Jokic deal. I think it's, I don't see him being, the MVP. It's okay. Look, I'm not a big MVP fan. Like, oh, this guy's a definite MVP player. I just think that the talent's really good. There's, you're going to have, I think Giannis will probably take a step up this year. I think, Embiid will probably be chasing it again for back-to-back. You never know what's going to happen with Luka. So I think it's going to be an interesting deal with the whole MVP deal. And I think that, there'll be some voters that don't want to vote him in just from what happened during the season and, and keep him out of the mix of getting 3 out of the last 4 years. So I definitely think
if your OKC pick rings true, I think SGA has a chance. If your OKC pick, if they're 4, 5, 6, I think he's got a huge chance. He almost led the league in scoring. He would be a smoky for some bettors out there that want to get someone who's probably down the line there if they have a good season. But if they're in 9 like me, like I picked, I don't think so. But he's a guy that could potentially sneak in there.
Last one. You're starting a team tomorrow. You have a chance, salary cap wise. It doesn't matter, no cap, and you have a chance to get Josh Giddey or Trae Young. So you would take Josh Giddey over Trae Young starting the team tomorrow as a point, for your point guard going forward. Fact or fake news?
I'll go fact. I'm biased because it's Australian, but no, I think if you're starting a team fresh, I would rather have the bigger 6'8" guard that doesn't shoot it as well but can grow into that than an undersized scorer. I think Josh, you can play. I think you can play multiple positions at times off the ball. If you've got a shooting guard like SGA, you can play him at the 2 and 3. Or it's not really the 2 and 3, but off the ball because he's not a great shooter yet from 3, but he knows the game so well, can cut off the ball, and he's actually a pretty good offensive rebounder for his position and his size. I don't know what his numbers say in the NBA, but I know in FIBA Boy he's getting some offensive rebounds. So I would my bias leans towards that way. I know people love Trae Young and he can score and he can get you 40 or 50. I think Josh is a different beast where he's not going to get you 40 or 50, but he's going to be a consistent 15, 8 and 8 guy. When you start a team scratch and you get a really good point guard that can run your stuff, I think your pieces are easier to put around rather than getting an undersized guard that now you have to hide at the defensive end. Not saying Josh is a great defender yet, but I think Trae's a very poor defender. You got to kind of scheme around and build your roster around. And then all of a sudden, if Trae's your starting point guard, what you can't really get a traditional point guard, then you get a 2 that is okay playing off the ball. I think it just creates a lot more issues for your roster.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a fact. I think Giddey, it would definitely be my pick over Young. I love Giddey's play just because of his size and his passing. He could post up. He can get to the free throw line now. He shot 70% from the line, like 73. The shooting will get better. He's got Chipping there. Chipping was the best shooting coach in the league, so I think he will get better. It's just all the intangibles. I think going forward, he's going to be fine. I feel as though they're going to sign him long term. And in some instances, depending on salary cap, I think that he might have a longer future in Oklahoma City than maybe SGA would, because of SGA's salary and you never know what they're going to have to do. And he's still under his rookie deal. I just really like the intangibles he brings to the position. I think he could play in the open court. He could play you in the half court. He's got a great floater. He could finish that shooting. He just has to become an average 3-point shooter. If he can get up to 36, 37%, and plus the ability to finish and do what he can do, he'll get better defensively. Some of the things that he does, he just has to get better with. He plays a lot of Greco-Roman wrestling when guys drive him, gets in some foul issues. Just got to be able to show hands and play with his chest a little bit with that. But I love him. I think the future's bright for him. Much better than I thought he would be coming in the draft process. Just being able to see him, through 2 NBA seasons, through the FIBA stuff, I think going forward he's going to be a star.
I didn't think he'd be this good this quick. I didn't think he'd be this good this quick. Yeah. So he's far surpassed where I think he'd be at in this point in his career. So continue to,
agreed.
Keep watching him. By the way, is that your new webcam, Pro?
It is. It is. Bogues, I fucking fucked with you a little bit for the lack of pay the last few years with this thing. You sent me a fucking unbelievable fucking camera, unbelievable fucking mic that I need about $400 in cables to hook the fucking thing up. Like I said, I'll look like Joe Rogan with a.
We'll send it. It's $12.99, Pro. $13.99. I know you're doing it, but I was just going to say the camera. This new camera really brings out your features even better than the other one. So I really like it.
Oh yeah, thanks. I'm really going for the obese look instead of the morbidly obese, and I think that this camera really shows that bedside for me. So
the sparkle in your eyes,
I appreciate that. So
sparkle in your eyes is immense with that camera. All right, we'll see you next week, Pro. Appreciate it, and let us know your thoughts on our predictions. I know we've got some wild ones, so we appreciate everyone supporting the podcast. Share it around. We'll see you all next week.
See you guys. Thank you.